let's not be blunt about it. You've destroyed a big portion of a family. You know, you haven't allowed that kid to go to university. I don't want to be that guy that's drunk in a gutter, that's puked all over himself and has cracked his head because he's hit the pavement, not because he's been hit by something, but because he's been a danger to himself and he's passed out because he's too drunk.
To reduce alcohol-related harms at a population level, you need to reduce consumption at a population level, and the kind of things that work in doing that are changes in affordability, availability, those kinds of things. So raising the price of alcohol,
People may buy you drinks, or you buy each other rounds, and you get into this pattern that makes things increasingly difficult to say no.
Here at Sir John's, on Thursdays you can get $1 pots.
Yeah, you can.
That sort of cheap alcohol, cheap and sort of easy access of alcohol. Is that something that the MSA sort of needs to be careful about in sort of how quickly people could take advantage of that?
Well, I mean, when we say cheap alcohol, Australia has some of the most expensive alcohol in the world. So America will have a similar situation. I know off the top of my head, in Australia you can get a slab of cans where each can is roughly $1.66, which will translate to roughly the same thing.
Increasing the price of alcohol doesn't decrease the demand, it just makes it a lot harder and it changes the environment you're drinking in.
Strategic lead for alcohol policy, Dr. Amy Panay, disagrees.
The thing that there's a really good evidence base for, you increase the price of something either through taxation or through minimum pricing, and we've said, you know, there's lots of research to show that reduces drinking and harm.
I was at the soccer the other week, and I was there with a few mates, and there was alcohol at the ground and we were drinking. Is that one thing that's, I suppose, more of a danger at sporting grounds, where it's I suppose to some extent it is a bit more closed off, rather than sort of, I mean, there is a danger obviously in if it were to spill it into the street, but having an enclosed area where people can be quite aggressive, particularly if opposition fans clash.
I think in Australia we seem to have the balance pretty right. I know with the football in the evening, the AFL football, they don't sell full strength beer. And we don't, and because it's quite a well monitored environment, we do see some people consuming too much at the cricket and they get removed, but we don't hear a lot of really negative stories.
Jordan Dalgleish, or Daggers, is a Melbourne DJ who has seen the effects that substance abuse can have on people all too often. A supporter of legalising marijuana, he is keen to promote a message of moderation among drug and alcohol users of Melbourne's vibrant nightlife.
I don't think everybody that goes out and gets totally wasted really enjoys it. I find that hard to believe. Now maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just me that doesn't like to get wasted every time I go out.
While other states have looked at lockout laws for bars and clubs, Attorney General Rob Clark has clamped down on cowards punches. Although these types of assaults are well in the minority of alcohol-related offences, the legislation brought in earlier this year means it is the harshest minimum sentence. Even harsher than the offence of culpable driving causing death, a far greater killer. When contacted about cowards punch sentencing, Mr. Clark responded. Where Labor's proposal included only a maximum penalty, potentially allowing the courts to set much lower sentences, the Coalition's legislation imposes a statutory minimum non-parole period of 10 years. The Coalition believes this penalty sends a very clear message about the tragic consequences that can flow from a moment of violence and puts would-be offenders on notice that they will spend a long time in jail if they resort to such violence. Going on to elaborate on culpable driving sentencing, Mr. Clark said, under the Coalition's baseline sentencing reforms, a person convicted of culpable driving causing death will be subject to a baseline sentence of 9 years. The baseline sentence requires the court to set higher sentences, not just for the most serious instances of the offence, but across the sentencing range.
It is probably the wrong focus of our attention, but as you say, it's a hotly contested political issue. It's an election year, it's on the agenda.
It can be very easy to lose track of how much you've had to drink on a night out, with a number of factors coming into play. Aside from the dangers of mixing drinks, such as spirits, beer and wine, there is a great deal of confusion as to what actually constitutes a standard drink.
I think people are not particularly good at telling you what a standard drink is or understanding the concept of what it represents. That's both across drink types, so a shot of spirits versus a glass of wine versus pot or pint of beer. If you drink any more than 4 standard drinks on a single occasion, putting yourself at risk of acute harm, so that's in that actual time. If you drink more than 2 standard drinks on a single occasion, you're actually putting yourself at risk of those longer term harms.
For Jordan, education is the key.
People look out for themselves if you just let them know how to look out for themselves. It's simple, man.